Good morning, gang. Dr. J for our special edition of Nutrition Tips. Now, as you all know, we're all cooped up inside, and I've actually asked a world leader, as far as I'm concerned. I've actually known Jamie for close to 20 years, and I don't know anybody, and I've been around the world a number of times and speak to many people, that doesn't research and work with processes for nutrition more than I know Jamie. So we've asked Jamie to actually come on and give us some nutrition tips. Make sure we're eating the right things, we're putting the right fuel to increase immunity and all the good stuff. Lose weight, build up, get stronger, whatever. So no one's better in my world than Jamie Hay. So welcome, Jamie. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much. And look, I've got to correct you. I had to correct you last time. I'm definitely not a world leader, but I try to stay up to date with the world leaders. So if anything, I'm just a librarian, a conduit to give or share, good information and good tips, practical tips with you and your members.
Well, look, you've always been at the front of the game, and I know that you speak with and learn from a lot of world leaders, and with all that info, putting into one, let's say, way of thinking, give you a massive USP. So I appreciate you sharing it all with our crew.
Pleasure.
So what are we going to talk about today, Guru? So last time we talked about Boris, and he actually has come out the other end with the problem with having 50% of his height around his girth. We also talked about some of the things about immunity and what carbohydrates do and so forth. So what's the little twist we're going to use today?
Well, just a quick review. Last time we spoke about FESIC, which was food and making wise food choices to not challenge your immune function. Exercise, we didn't talk about that at all. Sleep, we really didn't talk about that at all. So we're going to talk a bit more about those today. We definitely talked about the value of sunshine, particularly on the immune function, getting vitamin D in, and now we're told to stay at home, stay indoors and things like that. So actually getting some sunshine, whether it's sunshine with exercise or without, is really important. We talked about socially isolating, so preventing infection or infecting others. And we also talked about the value of connecting. So it was FESIC. So we talked about a bunch of things. There are some things I would like to highlight, and definitely what we're noticing globally is that the people who are succumbing to the virus are those that are immunosuppressed, which means they've got comorbidities. Typically, it's diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and high blood pressure. And if somebody is predisposed to that, or medicated for that, they are at higher risk. Typically, these are what's called metabolic diseases or metabolically influenced. And when we say metabolically influenced, they're influenced by diet and lifestyle, what you put in your mouth and what you do with your body. So, then there is no drug to deal with that. As a matter of fact, let's just rule out the fact that we may not have any treatment for this current virus in our lifetime. We don't actually have a treatment for the common cold. We do not have a vaccine for the common cold. So we may never get a vaccine. And I read the Courier Mail this morning, this is Tuesday morning, and we see both in Queensland and New South Wales, and there is and the United States, Trump, there's discussion about perhaps releasing, removing some of the barriers to moving around and getting back to work and things like that. So don't be surprised if the community will actually get used to the death rate that's happening around the world and saying this is another virus. And I don't want to minimize it, but don't be surprised. And I'll predict that people are moving back into the stock market this week. They say, gee, things are actually turning around. But there are some tips. If you suspect that you're immunocompromised, which means it's more difficult for your body to battle infection, there are definitely some things that you can do. And last time we talked about prioritizing protein in each meal. And the reason for doing that is that, particularly if you want to lose some weight, particularly around the waistline, your body will get you to eat, keep on eating until you meet your protein needs. So if you prioritize protein, you'll just naturally eat less, and that will help you in losing weight. And there's no doubt that more and more, I mean, people are sending me YouTubes that obese people are more likely to succumb. Now, I don't want to do any fat shaming, because you can be overweight and metabolically healthy. All right, you can be, but they're not the majority. And it's not so much being overweight, but what caused that overweightness. You know, that high insulin level, that insulin resistance, high leptin levels, things like that. Now, Steve, there is something else I want to share, which I'd like to apologize, I didn't share last week, is we talked about how it's not necessary to read food labels. All you have to do is don't eat food with labels, or less food, which is the highly processed food. And there is one highly processed food I'd like to suggest to your members that they avoid, and that's the highly processed vegetable oils. You know, the polyunsaturated seed oils, canola oil, soy oil, and things like that. So I really encourage you to have naturally occurring fats. You know, there's fat in avocado, there's fat in the meat, there's fat in the fish, there's fat in the eggs. As a matter of fact, people say eggs are a good source of protein. On a curry basis, they provide more fat than they do protein. So
when it comes down to those eggs, I know we were talking about it just this week. You said it was pretty much a super food, and there's been a lot of talk about eggs. And is it true, Jamie, with eggs, if you reduce your carbohydrate levels and have that protein and fat levels with the egg, that it has no effect on cholesterol whatsoever? But if you have a ton of carbohydrate, it changes the metabolic rates, or it changes the, let's say, the absorption of cholesterol. And it makes a big difference. So if you reduce carbs, have as many eggs as you like, but if you're eating tons of carbs, it can be detrimental. Is that a myth or is that a fact?
Well, firstly, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, but what I can tell you is with the thousands of members that we've put on the Healthy Inspirations and Dietflex eating plans, which is significantly reduction in carbohydrate, that their triglyceride levels go down and their HDL, so-called good cholesterol, goes up, so that their cholesterol profile improves. So, and now, you know, we used to criminalize eggs because there was a myth that saturated fat was damaging to your heart. But now the evidence is quite clear that you can really eat eggs and they're quite safe to eat. As a matter of fact, it's probably what you put the eggs on the toast, and what you put on the toast, which is the margarine, which again is that polyunsaturated food oil. So remember we said last week, think about, would your grandmother or great-grandmother recognize it as food? And of course, she would have butter and lard and things like that. They lived through the Depression. We may be going through another depression. So they never threw away any food. So if you've got some of that processed vegetable oil, you know, in your cupboard, I'd suggest you put it in the rubbish bin, throw it out.
So when it comes to vegetable, that's a canola and that sort of stuff. What about virgin olive oil? Now,
no problems. Extra virgin olive oil, no problems. No problems at all.
Even olive oil, now again, if it's a myth or a fact, if you're cooking with it, and you can probably sprinkle on your veggies and salad, obviously you don't cook with it. But if you cook with it, as soon as it starts to smoke, it actually becomes a saturated fat. So is that a myth or is that a fact?
Look, I don't know about the chemistry of that, but definitely oils have different smoke points. I know in our food planners, we separate fats depending upon their smoke point, you know, high smoke point foods. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you straight away, let's see. I'm going to go to one of our food planners and I'll sort of answer your question straight away. So the high smoke point oils for cooking are avocado oil, coconut oil, extra light olive oil, ghee, macadamia and other nut oils, sesame oil, tallow, lard, duck fat.
So they're the ones that take a long time to start smoking. Now,
correct.
I've been told that the coconut oils and those sorts of oils are better to cook with because they have it takes longer for them to smoke. And the reason that we have this smoke problem is because as soon as it starts to smoke, the constitution or the consistency of it changes to more of a saturated type of fat. Or
yeah, it's not healthy anyway. So
unhealthy fat.
Yeah. And really, if you're prioritizing protein, what we want to do is to make sure you're getting your essential amino acids, but with high nutrient density but low calorie density. And calories, the rest of the calories will come from carbohydrates and fats. So calories still count. The good news is you just don't have to count them. Okay, calories count, but you don't have to count them. If you prioritize protein, keep the starchy carbohydrates down, minimize processed foods, eat like your grandmother would have eaten, loads of green leafy vegetables and things like that. Don't be surprised if you're feeling healthier, more energy, and your waistline goes down.
So with this, with the components of that protein, for instance, we've got protein, fish protein, have some vegetable proteins, maybe meat, whatever people like, chicken. I've been told that it's actually, if you're not measuring or weighing it, it's usually a fist size of food that you should be eating, because that's probably about the size of your stomach.
Absolutely, like the palm of your hand,
So my portion that I'm going to eat today is that big. It's not this big.
Well, that would be a portion. That's right. That's a portion per meal. When it comes to proteins, most people are self-regulating, particularly females. If you take your girlfriend out for a meal and order a huge steak, she'll immediately say, I can't eat all that. As a matter of fact, one of the great tips for eating well is we cook double the amount of meat each night and double the amount of vegetables. And before we plate the meal, we just cut it in half, put half in the fridge for tomorrow, and then we eat our proportion. So that's a really good tip, and that can save cooking time, can't it?
So you cook double what you need, put it in half, and then just reheat it the next day.
Yeah, or just have cold meats and salad, and even cold meats and cold vegetables and things like that. Now, when it comes to this, I do have another tip, because we talked last week about insulin resistance, which is mainly undiagnosed, and it is correlated with a higher waistline. And you mentioned the ratio, that golden ratio. If your waistline is more than 50% of your height, that's very highly associated with having insulin resistance, which is typically undiagnosed. And there are some things, apart from keeping your carbohydrate load down, is meal timing can affect this.
So the time you have your breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and it needs to be, let's say, a routine?
Well, it's a case of shortening the time between the first meal of the day, and many people don't eat breakfast, and that's completely fine. Some people only eat 2 meals a day. Ellen, my wife, she has her first meal of the day at 12 o'clock and the last meal at 7 o'clock. So her eating window between 12 and 7 is 7 hours. So her non-eating window is 17 hours. So and the benefit is not from just reducing your eating window, but creating a larger non-eating window, because that helps the pancreas and all the hormonal systems recover. And particularly people prone to high insulin levels or insulin resistance and things like this, this is a fantastic strategy to help them normalize their metabolism. And so it's definitely worth trying. Just delaying that first meal of the day within your comfort levels, making sure the last meal of the day is not too late. And if anything, just start paying attention to it. When are you eating the first meal of the day? So if you wake up and you have a meal at 5 and you don't eat dinner till, let's say, 8 o'clock, gee, that's 15 hours, which means the non-eating window is 9 hours. Well, we actually want to reverse that. It'd be better to have an eating window of 8 hours, and so your non-eating window is 16 hours.
Is that because it's better to graze and keep the metabolic rate up without going, say, if you go have a breakfast and nothing until dinner, is that going to have too many ups and downs and you won't be able to regulate weight? Is it better to have grazing?
Well, personally, that suits me, but if somebody is struggling with their weight, I would encourage them to reduce their meal timing. Whether they have just 2 meals or 2 meals and a snack in between, if you do have a snack, I do recommend a protein snack that gets some additional protein in, or whether you have 3 meals and you might even have a a protein snack in between those meals. And I don't want to say, when I say snack, I'm not encouraging snacking, going and having a whole lot of processed foods and going and getting Mars bar and things like that. But maintaining good protein status is really important, particularly if you want to maintain your immune function. You know, you ask your doctor if, you know, people who are succumbing to any sorts of illnesses, often they have a depressed protein status. And so again, that prioritizing protein. So today I want to introduce the concept of meal timing, which is reducing your eating window to maximize your non-eating window. Of course, we call breakfast, that's how you break the fast, the overnight fast. That's how you break the fast between dinner and lunch, breakfast.
That's why it's called breakfast, is that right?
Well, I don't know, but that's what we say. Now, and the other thing we didn't mention last week is to maintaining hydration status. And I think you're better to be proactive than relying on thirst. As we get older, thirst becomes a faulty mechanism. So you really want to prioritize, you know, maintaining hydration. You know, of course, water is the best hydrator, but there is a myth I'd like to address, Steve. People often say, falsely, that coffee dehydrates. Well, coffee doesn't dehydrate, and let's apply a simple logic test. Steve, let me, remember last week we talked about the Tom Hanks castaway scenario?
Yep.
Okay, now I want to put you not on a desert island, but I want to put you in a desert, and let's say with, you know, a niece or a nephew or somebody young that you care about. If you had plenty of food, let's say bread or whatever like that, but no water, how long until you both died in the desert?
Oh, it'll be a day or two, a couple of days probably.
That's absolutely correct. But let's say you had plenty of water, but no food, how long would you live?
I'll live a lot longer because you'll be able to use your fat stores and so forth to stay ready to rock and roll. As long as we have the 80% of us is water, we've got to keep replenishing it. But
that's right. And so you're dead right. You know, you might, depend upon your body size, you know, actually that'll be survival of the fattest then. So you might last 30 days, you know, if you had plenty of water. Now, and here's the test question. Let's say you, there was no water, but there was plenty of black coffee. Would you drink it?
Absolutely.
and you would, and you'd live. Now, would you be wired? Yes. Would it stimulate your bladder and would you pee more often? Yes, but you'd live. So the point that I want to make is that coffee and tea is a net hydrator. You know, they don't dehydrate. They can get you wired and interrupt with sleep and all that sort of stuff. They can send you to the bathroom and things like that. But the coffee is actually a net hydrator. So don't need to avoid it.
That's good to hear. So if we're like a cuppa, have your black coffee and keep going. Terrific.
And as a matter of fact, if you want to have a white coffee but keep your carbohydrate levels down, rather you see these people having these grande lattes and because in that milk, even if it's skim milk, the sugar in the milk is called lactose. Now, I'm one of those people who are lactose intolerant. So if I have that in a coffee, it just doesn't sit well on my stomach. And so what we do here at home is we have a black coffee with a dash of cream because there's hardly any lactose, which is the sugar, in cream. So if you want a low carb or lactose-free coffee, just add a dash of pure cream to a lovely espresso black. So
it's better to have cream than full cream milk. Is that right?
Well, if you're trying to keep your, if you're trying to manage your weight and if you're trying to keep your carbohydrate load down, then you don't want all that lactose, which your body just converts into glucose, into sugar in your system. So a strategy to do that is to substitute, instead of a small dose of coffee and a large dose of milk, have just a black coffee with a dash of cream. Anyway, I just suggest...
I just want to jump on that, Jamie. I'm sure people, that was an absolute nugget that you just told everybody. And I just want to just make sure I got it right. So I just want to recap it. You're saying that if someone has a lot of lactose, which is in a lot of dairy products, for instance. You're saying that what happens with the lactose, it goes into your body and just converts to sugar.
Oh, well, you see, because your body is completely apolitical. It really doesn't care where the carbohydrate comes from, whether it's healthy or not, whether it comes from another animal like milk and cream do. When we consume it, we eat it or drink it, your body will simply convert whatever carbohydrate from whatever source, including lactose, which is a carbohydrate from dairy, into blood sugar. Now, Steve, you have about 5 litres of blood in your body, but in your 5 litres of blood, you have about 1.5 teaspoon of sugar in the form of glucose. And so anything above that, if you consume, say, Wheat Bix and toast and juice and fruit and a long white coffee, that's, as soon as you consume that, that's going to be converted to glucose in your bloodstream. And your body's got to deal with that. And how does it deal with it? Well, your body's got the equivalent of an automatic pool chlorinator. With, a pool chlorinator squirts in chlorine, but your pancreas squirts in insulin. Insulin's job is to drive sugar into the cells. And so basically, it sort of makes 3 phone calls. Like here, I've got my mobile phone. Firstly, it's going to ring the liver. Liver's like a toilet cistern, always topping itself up, and says, look, Steve's had his Wheat Bix and toast and 2 pieces of fruit, and it's elevated his blood sugar. Can you guys take any? And the liver says, look, all our cells are full up. Ring the big guys, the muscles. So it dials the muscles and says, can you guys take any? And muscles are like the sugar sinks of the body, and that's why resistance training is so important. And the muscles say, well, Steve hasn't gone for his workout this morning. He's been lazy, stuck at home, and he's not glycogen depleted because muscles store sugar as glycogen in the presence of water. So it says, call the big guys, the really big guys in the garage, the fat cells, okay? And so then it calls the garage, and the garage answers, and the fat cells answers, in the tummy, the thighs, the back of the arms, whatever like that. And the cells in the garage say, all our cells are full too, haven't you noticed? And but then they say, but unlike the liver cells, unlike the muscle cells, our cells are expandable to a point. Send us all you got. And I like to use a metaphor of a garage, not like a big double garage like we used to have here in Brisbane, but imagine our grandparents had 2 garages with 2 separate doors, and they pivoted off each other. In the presence of insulin, which is a hormone designed to drive sugar into the cells, the indoor to the garage opens up, facilitating fat storage, and the outdoor, permitting us to access fat for fuel and energy all day long, shuts up. So if we're constantly stimulating our pancreas to release insulin by having a low-fat, high-carb eating plan that we were told was healthy for us, we tend to get like this. And sometimes those garage doors get a little bit rusted like this, And so tell that person to eat less and exercise more, they'll get hungry, and hunger is the enemy of weight loss. So they'll struggle. People go on a diet New Year's Eve, and by the 2nd of January, they've given up their diet. So by reducing their carbohydrate load, we can bring down the indoor and open up the outdoor, which is sort of like the log, so we can have energy all day long. So as a matter of fact, you talked about grazing. We could go throughout the day. We could even skip a snack, skip a meal, and feel completely comfortable because we're becoming metabolically healthy. So that's the way your body deals with it. I know it's a pretty simplistic way I put it, but your body always seeks to return. Now, when we've gone through years and decades of too much insulin, eventually it's like the boy that cried wolf. Those cells become resistant to insulin knocking on the door, and we become insulin resistant. And even the fat cells, can be topped up and start spilling out, and we get fatty liver disease and a lot of other things. And unfortunately, in Australia, we have teenagers who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So they're getting liver disease as if they were drinking alcohol. Imagine taking your kids to McDonald's and they said to your kids, "Would you like vodka with that?" I mean, just imagine that. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous. Now, Steve, before we end today, I want to just share the message that we didn't share last week, which is about exercise. And particularly people are stuck at home. And if you do one type of exercise, it's the exercise that stimulates your muscles to stay strong. Remember, I called them the sugar sinks? So it's so important. And I like to look at the MED, minimum effective dose. And if you just do 3 exercises, such as push-ups, pull-ups, so you've got a pushing exercise, pulling exercise, and go up and down the stairs a lot, or squats or something like that. So you've got some sort of lower body exercise, or go up and down, carrying parcels. Luckily we've got stairs here. I'm sure it makes a difference to our health. But push-ups, chin-ups. But there is a gym owner's secret when it comes to resistance training. And if people get this secret, they can get significantly better results. And that secret is that muscles do not get stronger lifting weights in the gym. Now, I'm a gym owner, as you know, and that sounds like a stupid statement to make, but let's think this through. Muscles actually get stronger in the adaptation period, in the 24, 48 hours after you've left the gym, as a direct result of the overload stimulus you gave your muscles from the effort you made on the very last repetition of each exercise. So muscles actually don't get stronger while we're doing the exercise. They get stronger as a result of the adaptive stimulus we give our muscles from the effort we made. So don't think, oh, I just do 10 and stop. I mean, I see there's glasses. I could do 10 reps with the glasses. As you and I know, muscles can't count reps. All they understand is the amount of tension we're putting them under and the degree of overload. So if I get to the point where I can hardly lift them, one more time. So if anybody's working out at home, the advice I give you is to keep a record of how many push-ups or chin-ups or stair climbs you do, and always aim for a PB, a personal best. Don't compete with others. Just if you did 10 push-ups, aim for 11. If you did 10 chin-ups, aim for 11, or 10 and a half. So ask your body to do just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And don't be surprised if it responds. You come back and say, gee, I knocked out 11 chin-ups. So
I think what you just said a few moments ago with those progressive overload, and I think it, just wanted to recap it. It's within that 24 hours to 48 hours is when those, when the body starts to rebuild. But you said something that was absolutely quite profound. It was the last repetition that you did. I want everyone to listen to that. It's not just I did 10. You've got to get to, as you said, overload. So you go to failure.
Correct.
So I can't do it anymore. So it actually does it. Now, for those in the fitness industry, the actin and myosin will then kick in and all that sort of jazz. But the bottom line is that we grow when we repair. So what Jamie said is that, hey, it's not just doing 10, it's getting to that failure. It's just a failure. That's why we do force reps and so forth. And then you grow or get stronger in the next 24
And this is a good reason. If you don't have a personal trainer, now is the best time to get a personal trainer, an online personal trainer, because Steve, you are a good coach. And I always say a good coach, like a good teacher, like a good personal trainer, is somebody who gets you to do what you don't want to do to get the result you do want to get. Okay, so for some people, just the fact that they're paying a personal trainer makes them show up, makes them do it, and that personal trainer asks them to do it. And I'm I'm big on slow exercise. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get out of my chair and I'm going to show you one of my favorite exercises.
Okay,
And I want you to look at the speed at which I do it. And
okay.
I didn't bring my weights up, but I do use pretty heavy weights.
There we go.
I'm going to grab this garbage bin.
Okay.
And it's like this. So I'm taking momentum out of the exercise. I'm doing it super slow, but I do it to the point where I just cannot move that damn thing anymore.
So that goes to failure. So I noticed that you weren't locking out either. You were just straight out. And it was a smooth movement all the way up and all the way down. And I remember when I was in full training many years ago, when we used to do our squats, we never used to bounce. We used to do it as a fluid movement. And even now, when I do squats at home, it's I can just do squats to failure quite easily.
Oh, really?
It's like, go do I can do so many squats and all of a sudden my legs are absolutely done. And then what you've just shown us there, you just keep doing it until you just can't do it. Then you can do progressive overload, and then it gets, I don't have to do it for so long.
Absolutely.
I think I was told.
And having a trainer can make sure you're doing that with correct form too. Yeah. Like you were just checking out my form, and so it can really help you.
Terrific. Well, look, gee whiz, I love talking to you about these things, and you make it so simple about taking that the lactose, and it goes in and talks to all the buddies in the body, and making sure that we understand that it's not just the food, it's also the exercise, guys. There's so much stuff that Jamie's gone through. I hope you took your pen down and wrote some things, because once is never enough. Scrub through this and listen to it again, because absolutely fabulous ways of keeping you healthy, in great shape, and get ready to do your triathlons or just be comfortable. I always love going through all of the bits and pieces afterwards. I actually do, when I do interviews, I go back and I review it. So I'll get you to write some stuff down, put some comments in for Jamie, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. All right, bye for now.